So we're still factoring out the greatest common factor. This is kind of our part 2 of factoring out the greatest common factor. In this case, let's say that you're given the problem 6x squared plus 15x, and you're asked to factor out the greatest common factor. Okay, in this case, we're going to go ahead, all right, and remember that what we're doing is we're going to pretend like we're setting up a distribution problem for our brother or sister in middle school. In this case, I know that that's a plus, so we'll just say that some term on the outside times a binomial that has 2 terms on the inside is going to give us this. And so we're going to try and figure out what goes in here, what goes in here, and what goes in here in order to set up this distribution problem based on this right there, that expression right there. So what we're going to do, is we're going to start. Now I notice that in this case there's a variable associated with each of them. Each one has at least one x. Each one has at least one x. So I will make my factor trees. 6 is 3 times 2. I will make my factor trees, and 15 is 3 times 5. So our greatest common factor are the 3's. Okay? But the greatest common factor is more than just 3. Okay? Let's make a factor tree for my x squared and my x. Well, x squared is x times x, and I have to stop there. And x, of course, is just x. Okay? So that means that they share an x. So the greatest common factor of x squared and x is x. Okay? So that means we are going to pull 3x out of this. Okay? 3x times what equals 6x squared? I think 3x times 2x equals 6x squared. And then 3x times what equals 15x? The answer is 5. Okay? So in this case, your factored form, 3x times 2x plus 5 is your factored form of this guy right here. Okay? Now, I don't have this as part of the PowerPoint presentation, but there are other things that you can factor out the greatest common factor from. Okay? So for instance, let's say I have I'm going to do an example 3. Let's say I have a quadratic trinomial that is 18x squared plus 12x minus 15. If I were to factor the greatest common factor out of here, I'm looking at this, I see that all 3 of these terms can be divided by 3. So I'll take the 3 out, and I'll open my parentheses. So 3 times some number equals 18x squared. 3 times 6x squared equals 18x squared. 3 times something equals 12x. 3 times 4x equals 12x. And 3 times something equals negative 15. 3 times negative 5 equals negative 15. Okay? So I've simplified my quadratic trinomial by factoring out the greatest common factor. And that's something that happens too. In fact, that's something that often happens as the first step to doing something called, factor the polynomial all the way. Sometimes you'll see that. Factor the polynomial all the way. In which case you'll pull out this greatest common factor and then you'll factor this the trinomial into 2 binomials like we've seen before. All right.